from being ahead. We'll see. It's still early in the day. Anything could happen.
Yeah, exactly. And I am so excited to see what that can be. Remember, everyone's first choice is what is going to happen on that carousel. And we're going to be riding along with our first place representative right now, who is Wasian Iverson, starting with that Karma and Bow.
Yeah, 11 points, extremely dominant position, able to get a first and that +3. So if Wasian Iverson can put on a few more games of that caliber, no one can catch him, almost guaranteed top 2, which means everybody's playing for second. And Wasian Iverson really caught my attention in recent times, largely due to what felt like jokes from some of the other players on North American ladder. Bryce, Esports Law, and myself put together a power rankings going into a lot of the major tournaments, and Wasian Iverson was one person that was called out by Setsuko for being on his ballot. And at first we kind of thought it was a little bit of a prank, like, hey, like, does Setsuko actually really like this guy, or is he just saying like he's a god because he loses to him all the time in some pretty high variance moments? And the more we've kind of watched him like in these kinds of environments in these tournaments, it seems like he is putting on quite consistent performances to the point where whenever you do fantasy drafts, you have players who are taking him very early in the draft just because they feel like he is a reliable pick. So I think it's really interesting to see what Wasian Iverson can continue to do. Apparently someone has built a Tactician's Crown at 1-4, which is extremely impressive. I would love to know how Soul Reaver did that, because I would like myself to get some tack rounds at 1.
Yeah, I was like, that is a tech that I would love to know about. Spell Swords Enchantment should be best friends with Deja, so we already have attack speed here. A lot of people have actually taken out the Rage Blade on some of those Deja comps, getting more AP there. Hextech Gunblade's gotten a little bit more popular as we get more units on the board with those Mirages, so we do have that area to go, as we do have some actually pretty good choices here.
Yeah, so it's Spell Sword, so Jewel Lotus, that allows you to think about Deja as your primary carry. You can use Jewel Lotus to effectively get a Jewel Gauntlet and scale that Deja with attack speed. Preparation 2 is also just a very strong augment, particularly when you want to play a lot of reroll compositions. You have a lot of things that lend itself to it. So I can see both of those being strong options. The upside of Preparation is he already has some units that he could theoretically try to prepare. In this case, he is going to start off with the Lagoon while prepping what looks like to be some of the Astrals and the other units. You can also flip it. You can just play some of these weaker units, prep the Lagoon, and then when 2-5 rolls around, you have the opportunity to really start to win streak there. Interesting enough, he ends up leveling. A lot of people believe that Preparation should be an augment that you are willing to lose the first few rounds of the game. Especially now that it's changed, you just have to prep even less time, so it's okay to have to, stack your units a little bit quicker, or rather, it's a little bit slower, and feel like you're able to kind of jumpstart your win streak somewhere in the middle of stage 2. So this is a little bit of an interesting choice. I'm not sure how it's entirely going to work out, and the fact that he's named Rage Blade means that he's open to a bunch of different things. I'm not entirely sure what Wasian Iverson's angling for, but that's part of the benefit of this kind of open.
Mm-hmm. And that means that other players might not have that type of benefit too, like to expand on what you just said, right? If we don't know exactly where the GPS is taking Wasian, then the players don't, and that could actually be some really fun mind games to watch on the Convergence. As we are going over to Chickpea this time, who watched more than I think played that last lobby. We have the Ezreal 2 in the back line, and we have not leveled, so that's actually something that we would have expected Wasian to do because of that prep board, but we are going to be level 3 here and see if we're going to be able to take down 1 or 2 units with this comp, so we don't lose out too much. Getting an 8th place to start feels bad, but sometimes you're just like mulligan and you want to keep going. Don't act like that first game exists and play as clean as possible this time around.
Wow. Going up against Wasian, who did pick up a second copy of Kaisa and has that second Malphite prepping, so I guess all's well that ends well. That's exactly what Wasian Iverson was looking. I mean, if you're getting rolls like that, it feels like Wasian Iverson can't misstep. It feels like a lot of his plays are being rewarded, and I'm sure that's very high risk but high reward in some scenarios, and everything looks pretty good so far. In Trickpea land, we're clearly kind of angled for Olaf in some capacity. We have that early Olaf, we have that early Bow, so lose streaking here is not the end of it.
Oh, no, not at all. And remember, TFT is one of those few games where winning can actually be very, very frustrating. You want to keep this loss streak, especially since we have over 10, and we have units to potentially lose by just 1 unit as well. I mean, if you look at that last lobby, for example, these individual units that we're losing or winning by was the difference between the top 4 in that last lobby. So every piece of economy, your health, your gold, matters in these games, and Trick P already behind on a lot of it. So 88 HP and an Ezreal. Let's see if this is going to be a 1-unit loss or something more. Maybe we steal a win, but that would hurt our streak. It looks like this should be a loss based on what we see on the other side.
Yep. iLucky does have the Jewel Lotus picked. And again, it could have been something that Wage and Iverson scouted around, saw like, hey, look, there's a couple other people going for Jewel Lotus, which opened themselves up to Spell Sword Mirage variants with Deja, possibly playing the Kai'Sa reroll. I just feel like Jewel Lotus is one of those augments that unlocks a lot of compositions that you can immediately commit to at stage 2. And the current meta environment feels like you should be making strong decisions early. Also, by the way, I couldn't help but notice as I look over at someone's board, is a Spicy Appies that has 2 Ezreal 2s. Ezreal reroll is a composition we haven't really seen much of, and it's also a composition. It's actually a reroll composition that actually has a lot of risk associated with it. So I'm actually interested to see if he's leaning into it. It just so happens to play 2 copies of Ezreal and will lean into it until he gets to his core strategy. And with Appies, you never really know.
I think we saw it one time yesterday, and I do believe it top forward. So we know it can be possible. It was an Ezreal 3 at the end of the day, but we'll see where this Ezreal does land up, because those Ezreals can really ramp, too, because of the Mystic Shot. The AP will get you more attack speed, so you don't have to build that, and then you get mixed damage, too. It's some really good opportunities with Ezreal to potentially get you to some later game comps as well. We have a champion duplicator on this board, too, along with a Bruiser Spat. So doesn't look like that was an actual Tack Crown this time. It was the Bruiser Spat along with the Hextech Gunblades. I think Soul Reaver was the graphic.
That makes sense to me as we take a look at who Soul Reaver plays. This is a kind of important fight. We want to get that 4 streak to maximize our economy, going up against Renzer, who has 2-star Lux, but no mages. Now, that's actually not a bad thing for Renzer, because he does have Archangels and 2-star Lux, so it's still fine. Like, yes, you don't double cast, but Lux will start hitting very hard somewhere around this portion of the fight. And as long as she's not taking all aggression, can actually potentially win. Unfortunately, does end up getting ganged up upon. This monkey will not be denied. So Soul Reaver loses the streak. The last person... Oh, actually, I apologize. Soul Reaver was... I was talking from the Renzer's perspective. Soul Reaver is the person that's on a streak. And Lux not able to have that frontline support her. And Renzer's a person that really does like to play that Lux a lot throughout the weekend. We'll see if it ends up helping him, because yesterday we also saw a really strong Lux position where Renzer ends up taking an 8th place.
Yeah.
He was not able to actually get everything online in a timely manner.
I would say Lux was one of the more disappointing comps from yesterday. Every time we saw it, it was either behind already, or if it was already doing well, it did not hit the top 4. So let's see if this is going to be a little bit different this time, because like you said, with the Archangels, the top end of that Lux is going to be a lot stronger, especially once we do get those mages in. We have, a splattering of units here for Sully as well on the other side, who is one of our top 3 coming into today. But with this Bruiser Wukong and that Hextech Gunblade, there actually is some support going every which direction, and Wukong's ultimate is actually going to give a good amount of Omnivamp, and this is going to be a big loss right now for Sully, who was already in 2nd place. That's 4 units.
Yeah, leveling to 6 has become something that is a little bit more common. I think it raises some eyebrows because it was something that was even mocked in previous sets of TFT. And I think people have understood that in this current environment where streak and gold matters a lot, right? Like, people talk about early game economy trades like Astral and Lagoon. In the same way, the inverse of that is playing a high tempo win streak. All of these things all have one thing in common, which is you want to maximize your gold as much as you can. And so Soul Reaver very much in that camp. And while it looks a little bit weird to some of the players who may have not seen that much, I do think that Soul Reaver understood the risk going into it, and it was like very much a calculated.
All right, so this is definitely one of the more spicy, I get it, boards on the Convergence right now. Spicy Appies with the double Ezreal comp and a champion duplicator. So a lot of champion duplicators, I feel like, over the weekend so far. But now we have a lot more flexibility in terms of where we're going to go in the late game, right? We can maybe finish off a tier 3 unit, get a 5-cost tier 2 unit, or even get some more dragons as well. But in terms of what itemization we have currently as well, the tier can go into a lot of other units. The front line's good. We saw that Braum 2 eat like 2 Aoshin ults a little earlier today. So this is all still feeling good, even though it might not look like it's the best comp in the world.
Yeah, Appy's item situation is quite tragic. You saw him try to go for a rod on the carousel to complete an Archangel staff. Archangel's is one of the strongest items on Ezreal 3 if you're able to get it early. Oh no, and Ezreal actually ends up being attacked both from the Lux in the corner as well as the Diana that jumps in the back.
Oh,
And we'll see how Appies is able to kind of handle those 3-2 transitions. Sometimes you just randomly do get a double trouble here at the 3-2 augment, which actually would be kind of insane if he was able to find a way to get Ezreal 3 and roll down for it. But we'll see. Right now, this loss, it is what it is. Appies is on a win-loss anyways. So
yeah.
it really kind of depends on how his 3-2 augment shapes the rest of his game, because his items are very defensive, which means that he theoretically can play almost anything he wants.
Yeah, his number's still getting, waiting to get called, right? Not tons of final decisions needing to get made right now. No double trouble. We got Blue Battery and Axiom Arc, though.
Yeah, both of those options are interesting. Blue Battery is generically stronger because it just gets 10 ability power across all your units. 6 units, 60 AP. It's not bad. And I think Appies tends to agree. I think Axiomar kind of leans you to a specific way you want to play, which is the dragons. Oh, he's going to try to roll for Ezreal 3 right here. Oh,
He's got
and he has it if he wants to.
We could dupe, and we could keep rolling if we want to stay over 20 gold, though. Then we use the duplicator. We do. I know it feels weird to use the duplicator on a one-cost unit sometimes, but think of the tempo, right? Tempo's been kind of the word of the tournament so far, and in terms of fast, quick tempo, this is what you want to see right now. It's just 3-2, and this unit should be able to take us potentially to stage 5. So let's see how successful this is going to be. A lot of Luxes this lobby. I think this is the second or third one so far. Weijin moving still into those lagoons right now, keeping the Nidalee in play instead, but this Ezreal is definitely the star of this fight.
Yeah, it looks like Weijin Iverson is posturing himself for a Seraphine Bulldozer composition, utilizing Pantheon Graves and some of those Canyon Lagoon support units. The thing about Appy's play that's, very nice in my opinion is that he recognized he didn't need to level. I think a lot of people in this spot feel like, oh, it's 3-2. I want to level to 6 and power up. I want to streak. Appy's is very likely to streak anyways, and wants to make sure to get back into the game economically because he is very poor relative to some other players. The other side of it, another poor player is Soul Reaver, but he is full streaking, has encountered a Xiao now is playing a Jade Shimmer Scale board with Draven's Axe. So that is a very powerful combination because, one, obviously his board is very strong, right? Because he's able to get the 5 Jades, get that healing and the attack speed stacking. But 2, if he's able to get a couple of iterations of Draven's Axe to print the extra components in gold, he actually will rebound and slingshot his economy right back into the mix and have a couple of extra items. And he has double duplicator ready to go for the first high impact champion he wants to 2-star. So Soul Reaver is in a fantastic position to run away with this game.
Yeah, and Soul Reaver doesn't need to win all of these rounds either. Soul Reaver could get that economy, right? Still get those Draven X stacks. Anyway, it's almost like every single possibility is advantageous right now for Soul Reaver. We have the double dupes too, so we can choose, again, the tempo to increase our very strong unit if we want to choose it on Xiao, for example. But it was actually really interesting because on the other side is a very similar comp, but not as good in any way, shape, or form in terms of itemization. So I'm curious to see what iLucky is going to do after seeing that. We're riding along with TrickP again, who is bottom of the totem pole in the lobby and so far got 8th yesterday too. Got 3 firsts yesterday, so we know it's possible for TrickP, but traditionally, TrickP is one of those players that hovers around, a conservative spot in the mid game and tries to attack in the late game, but you can't attack if you're not alive. So hopefully TrickP is able to recover here with this item.
Doesn't get much time left. Yeah, it's not a prismatic lobby, but it's one of those situations where if you're just too far behind HP and you have dominant win streakers like Soul Reaver who might get online, it's just becoming harder and harder. So we do see this fast 7, if you will, going at 3-5. It's not really a fast 7. It's kind of an early 7. And you want to try to make sure to stabilize here and hit all your 2-star units for your scale scorns. We do have RFC Olaf. And I finally understand a little bit of what Tricky's predicament was, is that we didn't get that many item components, and the ones that we did don't lend itself well naturally to this composition. In fact, he probably will feel compelled to slam a Ruden's Hurricane here. And Ruden's is not one of Olaf's strongest items anymore ever since they changed the interaction with Scale Score. And a lot of times you want really powerful burst items like Infinity Edge and Hand of Justice. And Ruden's is scaling based off your current attack damage. So this combination, I hope Olaf has a high base AD. We don't even have 4 warriors in. So while even if we were able to get the win here against iLucky, I do feel like Tricky isn't in a very strong position to put together a win streak that he's looking for, because what the Olaf wants to be able to capitalize around this portion of the game while everyone else is greeting for their fast states.
Yeah, and so there are going to be some people that are going to be sacking, again, for those fast states. And the other thing about Olaf is it looks like we have gotten stacks to get us a little bit stronger, but it is a death by 1,000 paper cuts Olaf right now. Everything, like you said, scaled off of that AD, and with the Runins, it's going to be a little backline access, right? Which is okay right now. It would be better even earlier, but that's the type of thing that gets weaker and weaker every round from pretty much here on out. So Olaf, as an Olaf 3, might have enough base stats to make up for that, but death by 1,000 paper cuts can probably win a couple rounds. We'll probably lose a couple rounds, but Trick P needs to save this HP because there's not going to be enough time to make a move and snap like a Cobra a little bit later. And Appy's still just running with the Ezreal because we can, and we have a Graves with the Spat too. So this could be a couple different things, but we already have those Tempests, and that's going to increase the attack speed of everyone on Appy's side anyway, who's also a Tempest.
Yeah, Appy's kind of playing a flex board, going back to this roots of TFT. But again, kind of run over by this board that all in. Appy's is still very poor. He's at 30 gold, level 6. And again, his item situation is quite tragic, right? Part of it is that at this point, you expect to have a 2-item carry. He has a single tier on an Israel 3. That's just not good enough.
Yeah, it's coming out of his eye. At this point, he's just crying.
Rolling down his cheek ever so
yeah. Exactly. But now we have some good frontliners here at Olaf as well. More warriors here. So Satch kind of in the middle of something right now as well. We've got good items, right? We've got the Morellos, which is going to be really good if we don't have that Sunfire board. But again, we do expect some of these 3-cost units now to get to that tier 2. We do have a tier 2 Olaf already in the lobby. So we'll see what happens after this round if we're going to get a pivot, because 4-1 is one of those decision-making rounds, because you're going to get to your augment at 4-2, and that's pretty much your late game. Everything becomes more and more finalized from this point on. If you're too busy still making decisions or doing the forever pivot, this is where you're going to get the most consequences from that.
So clearly, I think we're going for Jades here. We find a Siphon, an opportunity to kind of lean into that. I'd be kind of surprised if we leaned only into Whispers long term. Clearly, it's our strongest board right now. We can put these items immediately onto Siphon. But longer term, I think we want to try to see if we can get Jades back into the mix, because, with Whispers, you really want to specifically have items for Zyra as your secondary, or it just as a way to split your damage source across Siphon and Pantheon. But I think people forget about Whispers. I think it's totally fine as a mid-game comp. Part of the reason why it came to prominence in the first place was because of the immense amount of tempo you had from rolling at 7. And it's just a strong recognition from Sag to be able to understand that right now he doesn't have to roll all the way down to get a Shio. I think a lot of players lose the nuance of this composition. That being said, we're not buying the Jace in the shop, and we're keeping the Sejuani. So we actually are open to a couple of different things. An instant reroll and taking a look at what we could get. Cyber Implants, Knife's Edge, Cyber Shell. These are all really strong silver tempo augments. Didn't really like any of the Pandora's or Future Sight that you saw previously.
All right, so it's going to be a Cybernetic with Celestial there. So everyone with an item is going to get a little bit stronger, and that's going to be very nice for our Siphons. For example, we are going to be looking for Shio, and we have the Zyra too, and that with that attack range and actually some CC, Zyra can be a difference maker in some rounds, especially if you're stacking in the back line or the front line here, where she can get the entire AoE destruction there. As we do have just the tier 1 dragon and the Olaf here, Dan.
Okay, so we did end up not pick up the Jace, and we showed Shio, so I suppose we're just committed to Whisper, at least in the temporary, while we recover our economy. I'm kind of surprised by that, just because it feels like his board would be set up better long term by just holding on to it. I recognize that does cost a lot of gold, and it's going to be a long time before his board can materially improve, especially since he wasn't holding on to things like Gnar and Jace and Jax and Shio. It just gets really expensive altogether. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this, quite frankly. I just feel like the 6 Whisper with the setup is okay now, but I do find I also can see a world where it just kind of caps him in an artificial sense, and he isn't even able to win this fight despite rolling a material amount of gold here at 7. So Sag, definitely in an awkward spot. We'll see if it ends up biting him later on, because I'm still a little bit hesitant about our decision there.
It's kind of like we played two separate games in that lobby, right? We went one direction, thought we might be lost, going another direction, and let's see if we're going to be able to recover, just like TrickP has. Like to see that man on fire right now because the first game was rough. But we do have what I would assume when you see the Mirage variant here. Is going to be the Deja, especially with attack speed. Every single time the attack lands, I think it's Spell Sword's enchantment, so we'll get stronger. So it's all about Deja and that front line giving Deja time. And it's the Spider-Man meme right now, right? On the other side, we've got the RFC and Rageblade on the Deja too.
Yeah, I think I like Wage and Iverson's setup a lot more, and that's not just me using the results immediately of Wage and Iverson winning. It's just that the comp seems a lot more balanced. I guess the difference is just level 8 versus level 7 just help get a little bit more units, but I think the guild really provides strong support there, so well done to Wage and Iverson. I kind of thought Wage was going for the Seraphine build, ends up going back into Deja. Hopping on board with Renzer, who did end up taking a loss of Spicy Appies. Appies finally got offensive components for his Ezreal 3, and lo and behold, he's actually beating a lot of boards that all end or roll down. So, just a good recognition of Appies to be able to set himself up and be patient about it. And on the flip side, it feels kind of bad for Renzer, who's playing a built different board and not able to really get things online quite yet. The problem with built different is that a lot of the units that you want to play around, they're very elusive. Sometimes you feel like, you want to get the Graves items, and all of a sudden you just keep getting nonstop Pantheons and Hecarims and vice versa. It's a very expensive composition, but it's very fun. And so I personally really enjoy Build Different. I think it's one of the most rewarding ways to play TFT. We'll see if Renzer can pull himself out of this situation that looks a little bit bleak.
And with this particular built different, what's really interesting about it is, think about no synergies as the synergy, right? I think that helps a lot of people when it comes to built different. It feels really weird, and some people do drop it at the end of the game because it doesn't seem to reach peak power as some other comps that might be quote-unquote meta. So built different can also be pretty good with a variety of 3-cost units, but it does seem like we're going to keep the Shimmer Scales in this time because we already have a Soraka 2 as well in the back line. Are we going to see another Soraka 3? It seems to me my blessing and curse so far for Rodan. I've seen 3 so far in competitive TFT, and that's a Lux, not a Soraka. My bad, my eyes. I'm 30. But it's going to be good work, and so hopefully this Lux is going to show us exactly what Lux can do, but there's just too much HP for these dragons. Another Xiaoyu and Siphon there.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a reason why, for example, we saw Sag avoid going for the Jade, but, I think that the comp can support multiple players. So if you're kind of showing you why the traditional Jade, Soifin, Whispers board is still very solid. Over in Renzerland, I think he also is struggling a little bit with his itemization. A lot of times with the attack speed and the HP with built different, it scales better with attack damage. Recognize that he got the Shimmer item with Draven's Axe, but still kind of a little bit tenuous. Hopping on board with another tenuous position here is Lucky, who has just, 1-star Deja, and I believe is holding the Zippy just on the bench with no Zippy on the board, hoping that this is enough, but his front line is a lot more fragile than it might lead you to believe, because all he has is a Sunfire cape. He's relying on the innate tankiness of 2-star units, plus the Cavalier that's been recently buffed. Is getting a little blessing in disguise, because Renzer is very weak at the moment. Renzer takes another loss, and this is the worst feeling as a BD player. Boop, sometimes you just feel like you can't win a fight no matter what, despite having what should be a pretty strong board on paper.
Because you're having fun, when you're building it up, and then you're finally I've arrived, and nothing happens. Something's happening on the screen right now for Lucky, who is on Elimination Station. A Tack Crown on the first roll for Treasure Dragon. Only 7 gold, but where are we going to add units, right? We don't have any gold, so where are we going to get stronger, right? We have the Heck 2 on the bench. We also have the Zippy on the board already, but nothing to roll or really get stronger, right? So Tack Crown is an easy pickup usually, but this time we're actually going to have to wait a little while longer for the value.
I feel like I'm watching a replay of the previous game. This is almost exactly the kind of spot that Appies found himself in previously, where he was stuck on Deja 1, somehow kind of stumbled into a Tactician's Crown in the middle of the game, but largely just kind of stuck on 1-star Deja and having Nunu hold tank items. This is just the very unideal situation for him. In fact, I think that Lucky may have made a slight misstep here of building the Warmogs onto the Nunu. I totally understand the desire of wanting to have the Sunfire Cape live as long as possible, but if that's the case, I think I'd rather triple stack Jace at this point and frontline him, because in the Titans and the Warmocks have some really good synergy, and we don't have a Mirage that lends itself to helping Nuno. There's no Dawnbringer or any kind of electric or anything like that. So we'll see. I like he's on his last life. Maybe just felt like, hey, I'm gonna go with my first instinct here and just hope that this Nuno can survive. Going up against the Siphon that's gonna bite that Deja. See ya later, Lucky. This looks like a complete death, and you might be our first player eliminated here.
Yeah, Elimination Station gets the tack crown on the Treasure Dragon, has to take it off and kneel for Sag by the end of it. Are we have enough? No, -5, so that is an 8th. TrickP does win out, and so we do have a couple more rounds before we get another elimination, but this does seem to be a close lobby again. We had some top-heavy lobbies yesterday, 67 being the highest here, but the 3rd, 4th place spot is still anybody's spot because no one really running away in the middle of the pack right now with anything.
Look at Sully's position. Sully going for a build, again, that we saw yesterday, and something that we talked about on broadcast, which is I think a lot of people feel like if you play Jades, you have to think about Siphon and how you're going to tech in this double dragon. But kind of forget that vertical Jades is also a viable build, particularly because, well, one, it's a pretty steady curve, right? You can play early Jades like Wukong and Karma in order to get to this spot, so your power level will be consistent instead of waiting to lose streak or win streak only on that ability to start getting things rolling. But at the same time, I feel like this vertical Jade is still good because of the way the matchups line up into some of these units. The Xiuyou1 just gets access to the back line, able to deal some pretty critical damage to Wage and Iverson. And so Sully able to kind of utilize a traditional build that we haven't seen very much of. And I've been kind of impressed with how vertical Jade has been performing this weekend.
Yeah, it's the second time we've actually seen it do not just well, but pretty well, making it the top 4 moderately easily. Let's see if it's going to maintain there. Sully does get the Xiuyou2. We've got some prep going on the bench as well, so hopefully this Deja for Wasian, if we get a Deja 2 at some point in the future, if we have enough time, is going to be better than the other Dejas based on our base stats, but again, we have to get there. In terms of frontline, you need time for Deja, and what does Wasian not really have is that frontline. We're already seeing Jace 2s with tank items. This one has offensive items. The Morelos tag is going to be pretty nice, but let's see how good this is looking rough. This Deja is going to be able to do, especially against a fully itemized Xiuyou, who we just saw do well against the Deja. This Siphon not going to the same school as the last one. Not the backline access that we saw in the previous round for the Deja. We're going to avoid another bite, it seems like. We're stacking that Rage Blade, and this is going to potentially get one more unit kill, but no, the Siphon is going to live. Nice Thief's Gloves roll for that particular situation. But that is going to be another elimination for first place, opening up the rest of this lobby for that top 2 spot.
It's a big deal. Wage and Iverson points all of a sudden have come to a screeching halt of running ahead. This is opportunities for people who are behind to get some valuable points. I see a Jade emblem on the carousel. I wonder if Sully's going to think about 9 Jade if it falls to him, because a lot of people are going for it. A lot of emblems onto this carousel in general. Sully beelines for it. And I think for Sully's perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to go for 9 Jade, although 9 Jade is also very strong if you're able to get it for free like that. I also think that maybe he can cut a Jade and tech in some other powerful units, because part of what makes Jade strong is that you have one of your best units, Xiuyou, a natural Mystic. And kind of the way the lobbies line up, everybody wants Mystics currently in their board. Now we're hopping on board with Spicy Appies, who has kind of run into an awkward spot, whereas Ezreal 3 has really fallen off and has not been able to really get that expected power spike. And I don't even know what Appies is necessarily rolling for. So he's an Ao Shin. Doesn't have time to think about how to tech that in, but can replace it next turn in some capacity and find a way to play 4 Tempest with Ezreal. I think that is a strong way to kind of combo. You could, for example, remove the Yasuo and the Kiana and try to play for that Ao Shin. You just go up against Soul Reaver. Soul Reaver has the the cookie cutter Whisper Soifin Jade board. Is Appy's going to win? This would be a huge victory to be able to get it.
I completely agree. Let's see, the Siphon's going to bite. No, turns around instead. This Ezreal can take the Siphon down, but the Mystic shots aren't going there. It was actually targeting the Jace instead of the Xiuyou right in front of them. So Spicy Appies is now on that precarious position of missing out on 4th place. We noticed it not too long ago, but the battle for 4th in this lobby is intense. Sag, Spicy Appies, Renzer, all in the mix right now. One of those players will not make it into the top 4, and right now Spicy Appies with this itemization, just a tier 1 Itis, tier 1 Kiana, everything, all hopes and dreams are for this archaeologist there on that Ezreal, and we didn't put the Aoshin in either.
Yeah, for Appies, going up against Sully, who might have 7 Jade or 9. Does get the Zephyr onto the Xiaoyu very big. Able to take down one of the sources of DPS and Olaf, who's on the edge there. As long as Ezreal can stay alive, and, you know, if Itis can continue to get repeated casts, his Fort Guardian is pretty tanky. But Xiaoyu does deal true damage. Historically, the matchup of Itis versus Xiaoyu does tend to go towards the Xiaoyu player if they're able to get up to the Itis in a reasonable time. Oh my god, the Mystic Shot able to deal big damage. Appies, unfortunately, has lost his Ezreal 30. Just a little bit too weak. Not able to find Itis 2. Ends up taking a loss at the same time as Sag, who narrowly able to get a top 4. So job well done to Sag, able to outlive Appies, who had that very early Ezreal 3, but unable to capitalize.
I mean, had a tier for, I think, the majority of the game is what it feels like. And you saw how good Ezreal could be, right? So imagine if it was an Itis 2 with time in the front line. And I don't know if everyone saw, but Ezreal also missed another Mystic Shot on the Xiaoyu that I think would have taken it down. So, you know, sometimes it's that as well. The Ezreal sneezes, misses the shot, and it screws you over because that was the kill blow. That was your win condition. As now we do, this would have been great for Appies to get for his front line, but it's going to be Renzer instead. This is a very interesting top 3. Renzer very far out of the top 2 with that 40 HP. We're probably going to get a Sully Soul Reaver 1v1 situation where we see that a couple times, but is Renzer going to be, you know, part of the rock, paper, scissors and get himself into the mix by taking the HP down? Looking at the comp, it could be. I mean, we have a very good bulldozer possibility here with Graves, and we're seeing a Last Whisper. We see a lot of Giant Slayers, but not a ton of Last Whispers.
This is a really good recovery from Renzer. The fact that it looked kind of tough and just needed to hit a bunch of these forecasts, and I look into his board and all of a sudden there's a pair of Graves too, which actually leans into a way. Like, don't sleep on Renzer just yet. If you're able to get this win, able to get the carousel, if able to even position himself to potentially get Graves 3, he actually could end up winning this lobby. He does end up, looks like he narrowly takes a loss here, but he's not going to be dead just yet, and there's a glimmer of hope. If he's able to get Graves 3, he's also close to getting a Draven's Axe stack. I can see Renzer finding a way back in this game, but his time is basically now. He needs to hit big. I just don't think it's going to happen right now.
He needs that Draven's Axe proc. And the fact that it stopped at 95 in that last round, we're going to have to wait a whole other round that we don't have the HP for, potentially. That might be the nail in the coffin, as we're going to be switching in our Rakan, leaving the Nila on the bench for now putting it in. And let's see where these items go. We're going to put the Shojins back on the Varus. Hextech Gunblade on the Graves. So it's all Graves, and we got to get this Draven cash out, but we're still seeing another Soifin comp here. The Zephyr lands on Rakan. Could have been better, but still taking down a frontline unit. Dan.
That's right. The Graves does end up proccing the Draven's Axe. Part of it is that Draven's Axe is only 7 gold. I think that this is just a little bit too much pressure coming the other way. So Reaver's at level 9. Renzer replaced Zyra, really invaluable support unit. Trying to mix and match some of the items in case he's able to find something better. So Siphon does get stuck for a brief moment, and the two Graves are keeping each other alive. Actually, a really good job there from Renzer to stay alive. And so the risk of selling the Zyra, repurposing some of these items for some of his other units, really good job. He has 7 Graves. Looking for it. Soul Reaver is now, Sully is now rolling down. What looks like to be the chase to Soraka to potentially go for 9 Jade. 9 Jade is very, very strong in terms of getting the attack speed and the healing. It's much more of like a comp that plays for second as opposed to first, but I'm curious if Sully can think about ways to get this comp over the hump.
Yeah, because at this point, he might be able to win attrition-wise. Let's see where Soul Reaver's power is. This is a very important 1v1. This is going to give us a pretty good look into the future, if this is going to be position-based, if the comps are separate from each other. These are both Soy Fins, one with a Bruiser emblem, though, in the back line to help out with that Jace. So everything going on in the middle of the board. The cooldown starting to happen, but Xiaoyu... Look, full health. Edge of Night's so good on that unit, as well as the Giant Slayer. And did Renzer come back potentially?
Oh my God.
Built difference? Yes, sir. Jade Statues can't take him down, and so Renzer is going to stay around and compete for second place.
Hey, Graves off carousel, and if the Graves in the shop, Renzer all of a sudden slingshots from third. There's a Graves with an Edge of Night. So we ever go for that just to deny it? That would be so brutal. Oh my God. Rat Reaver in the house. Renzer now is kind of lost. Like, what do I go for now? That was kind of my entire game plan.
Just hit. Now you just got to hit, right? Maybe it'll be in the pack. Wait to roll for Soul Reaver to sell maybe the Graves. Oh man, now we're getting into like the true mind games of a TFT. Edge of a Night, not really going to be going on anyone either, so it's just a wasted item to block the Graves, because Renzer's win condition is that Graves 3. There's one whole one out of the bench, and we're going to get another pivot here at 6-5. This is a little bit desperate, but we're going to get those dragons in, because they're pretty strong, especially that Xiaoyu at the moment.
Positioning is going to be something that takes a backseat priority, just does something to try to get some units in the right spot here. Renzer going up against Sully, and Sully has rolled out completely. Sully also chasing Jace 3. Keep your eye on that. That is a very viable win condition for some of these Jade boards. And I just don't know if these Graves can handle the Xiaoyu. Xiaoyu systematically chopping up one AD carry after another. Idas is still tanking and keeping the other Graves alive. It'll come down to whose AD carry can reign supreme here. Graves versus Xiaoyu. The brink of dawn, able to get the second cleanse. But I think this Jade form is just going to be a little bit too strong. Renzer, a valiant effort, once again making quite a late game surge. That is one of the best top threes you'll see all weekend long with the build different from Renzer. And now it just comes down to Xiaoyu battles here. But Soul Reaver did transition to that Dragon board. We'll see whether or not he's able to stabilize. Has found 2-star Aurelion Soul on top of the 2-star Aoshin that's in the shop at the moment. 15 seconds, and we have somehow on a cap board from Soul Reaver from the Soifin board. Who's going to be able to get the edge here? It kind of depends a lot on things like the targeting and whether or not we can get access to backline for Sully.
All right, let's see if that backline is going to be accessible. It's going to be Renzer versus Sully. I mean, Soul Reaver versus Sully, and Soul Reaver needs to win every single round from here on out. Sully needs to get rid of those dragons with the Giant Slayer and Archangels into the backline. Those dragons are going to be strong the entire time. The Bardolt pauses a couple of these units, but it's really the Xiaoyu in the backline that needs to take down the rest of these dragons. Avoids the Aoshin ult for now, but everyone is going to surround the Xiaoyu, and Sully takes the loss. Soul Reaver will be coming back next round with an extra item as well.
This is kind of some of the problems that we talk a little bit about. This comp plays for second very often when you play Vertical Jade. I mean, hell, we're playing Wukong at this stage of the game, which is, he's a great mascot, really gets the crowd going, especially when he, busts out the popcorn and hot dogs. But he's really there as your victory cigar in this composition. He really doesn't do anything in the face of Terra, right? He can bonk, send Terra to horny jail, but that's about it. There's nothing really else that happens with this Jade, because it's pretty much just a Xiaoyu show with a support Olaf. And also, I felt like Sully had at 1.7 Jaces, so the fact that he has 6 implies that he had to sell it for some other reasons. And I feel like we're so far away from Jace 3 that it almost feels like we don't have a legit win condition here for Sully.
Unless we happen to roll 2 Jaces in one pack, which, has happened in the past, but won't be happening in the present, it seems like. We got a little bit of an upgrade for the bench, but it's still, Xiaoyu got to the back line, right? Xiaoyu was able to do the job, but could not break through the first dragon in the Terra Hex. We did switch, I think, a little bit on this one, but it's going to be Aoshin and Aurelion Soul doing a lot of the damage there. Even though that is a Runeans, we have the Archangels and the Giant Slayer on the Ao Shin. Backline does get Bard ulted, so
Wow.
and the Ao Shin got shrouded, so this is going a lot better right now for Sully on the yellow side, and you're already seeing the difference in just positioning and some itemization there. The Shroud so much better than the Ionic Spark in terms of what Shelly was able to get us, and that is going to be it. The fight from 3rd to 5th was very, very close, but the fight for 1st